him no. The story told by a few years ago. It's such a geschmack of mice. Based on the Sotne Dechet Maskim, these mice are gewaldig. I have very little of the toich of Perek Yudches to learn. But this is our fourth shiur on the Perek. And officially we don't have more than 3 prakim on the Perek. In the last Maimer I even had a few. By the way, Rabbi Tauber, I have a Machon for you. Wow. Station, give this a I dafka made this into a fourth. In other words, I made you a copy from this sefer. Oh, you bought one? Huh?
It's fine.
Okay, good. Hello, I dafka divided this into a fourth shiur because the last 3 shiurim, at least the second one or the third one, were be'ikir explaining the other shita. And I wanted to give this shita, the feed derush zeh, the shita that has esses, firas, and ed its own time, even though it's pushed a few shuras. So I thought of this. Let's learn this. This is the Rebbe's. This is the Maimer Hayshevas Baganim Tov Shin Yud Gimel. Now, if you have the Maimer, if you look in footnote 22 of this book, the Da Hayshevas Baganim Tov Shin Yud Gimel Gimel, Seif Mamar Maluk at Chaylik Beis Amad Reish Lamed Aleph, Beitzah Chadash Amad Reish Lamed Beis, Ha'ara 20. Ha'ara 20 is on your sheet. So, I have 2 kavanas here. I have 2 kavanas. Here's 2. I have one more. I have 2 kavanas. We're going to learn pieces of the pnim of the Maimer. And I want you to understand, what I'm about to show you, I have been saying in the last few classes. I just want to show you that I didn't make it up. What I was saying is written in the Rebbe's Signin. The Rebbe's Signin on these sugis is very kitzir. Because if Allah of the Friedrich Rabbeim. So you'll see what we were talking about Tzimtzum in the Pnim. Then we're going to learn the few shuris in the beginning of the last paragraph, the beginning of the paragraph of Lamed Chas, and then the beginning of page Lamed Tes. Just mamish a few shuris, which is negated this hemshech, and then we're going to go back and read Ha'ara 20. Okay, that's the plan for today. So like this. Let's talk about a gimel, but we're jumping around, which means like this. If you're going to listen with a half an ear, you get schlafen. Because if you're not going to pay attention, you're going to lose me, because I'm moving around, okay? Begin the beginning of Perek Gimel, Inyanu. The Eira Kav. The Mamalo Kalalman, the Eira Mamabchal Eira Kav. Hamshachos Eidea Tzimtzum. The Kav comes through the Tzimtzum, okay? And we're going to get back to the Kav later. Mamalo Kav comes through the Tzimtzum, but then never turn over your pages and read the bracket. Okay, the bracket is 6 lines from the top of the page. On page Reish Lamed Beis. You with me? Yeah. The Hagam, even though Shagam Eir HaSeviv Hu Eish Nimshlach Achar HaTzimtzum. Not just Memalik Kalalman goes through Tzimtzum. Seviv Kalalman goes through Tzimtzum also. Now Rabbi said the meaning of these words is not only Memalik Kalalman is changed by the Tzimtzum, Seviv Kalalman is also changed by the Tzimtzum, okay? As opposed to the highest Madrega, which is called Etzem Avein Seif, which is Lei Naga by a Tzimtzum cloud. So the Rebbe says, it's true. Seviv Kalalman is touched by the Tzimtzum, but it's only touched by the Tzimtzum. Harayadua, it is known. Shepula Sat Tzimtzum Eira Seviv, that the effect of Tzimtzum Rishon on Eira Seviv Kalalman, he be'ikir is primarily, now this be'ikir you could go crazy from. What is this be'ikir doing here? And what does the be'ikir mean? And this be'ikir gets to your ikir, to your why the word be'ikir? Be'ikir means that a little bit there is a shinoi. So eat your heart out. Loi b'negeya laha'oyer gufa. The tzimtzum is not regarding the oyer. The tzimtzum doesn't change the oyer. Ki'im only shaloi ya'ir be'giloi, it shouldn't be revealed. Parenthesis, which is what the word pnimius means. Giloi and Pnimius are synonyms. They mean the same thing. So the Eira Sev of Kalalman, Lifnei Tzimtzum was Begiloi. When Eira Sev of Kalalman is Begiloi, nothing else but Sev of Kalalman could exist because it's mevatel everything. That's the power of Eira Sev of Kalalman. What did the Tzimtzum affect? Eira Sev of Kalalman is here, just like before. The only chilik is it's not Begiloi. And of course, you know that Makiv says means Behelen. Where's your cousin? He was here, no? Where's your cousin here tonight? How that it's Bahal? And he continues. Now listen carefully. The be'er ha-memale. Are you looking inside? When it comes to memale kol almin, ha-tzimtzum hu b'negeh leher atzmei, the tzimtzum changes the oyer. The tzimtzum changes the oyer. Shayideh ya tzimtzum. Look inside through the tzimtzum. Nimshech, it's brought down. What's the next word? What's the next word? Translated for Nishava. It's created. Now, how could it be created? I thought it was Dvekas, I may not more, and all good to Zachin.
I'm going to ask him if he's...
Who are you going to ask? AI.
My cousin.
Oh, please. Nishava means it was Nishchadish. It wasn't created Yesh Mayayin. It wasn't the Pshat before it wasn't there. But before it was in Moimama Dematziv, and now it's in a new Maimah Dematziv. So even though, as I taught you on Monday, the Eira Kav, it comes after the Tzimtzum, is still Dvekus. It's still from the Erization Lefnei Tzimtzum. But there's a Chidush in the Eir. The Eir has been changed. It's a kind of light that wasn't before. But Chaver, don't make the mistake that Tzimtzum Rishon is creating Eir. That's nonsense. Because Eir has only one source. The Moir, which is the Eibishter. Oil comes from the Eibishter. So what is the pshat that you're creating an oil that didn't exist earlier? That the oil, which comes from the Eibishter, is nischadesh. It's changed to the extent that you use the word chidush, that you use the word havoya. So tzimtzum erishin, legabe seif kol almin, doesn't change it. It just makes it that in comparison to the oilamais, to us it's hidden. Memale kol almin is not touched by the tzimtzum. It's changed by the tzimtzum. It's so changed by the tzimtzum that you can call it a creation. Do you looking inside? As opposed to the effect of tzimtzum when it comes to seviv kalalmin, he kanal, as we said before, she became this makev seviv. It means only that the eira seviv should be hidden. When it comes to the eira seviv itself, it's not an oil which is created. Now, how do you translate created in our class? Nischadish. There's no chidush of the air. Lagabe the air was before. Ki im hu agile de tzeiv shel lifnei tzimtzum. It's the same air which is lifnei tzimtzum, and there's no chidush in the mahus of the air before the tzimtzum, after the tzimtzum. In other words, gilu shalaya de hefsek. The hefsek is not creating a shini in the air, except that lagabe yos it's called helam. Naga bayatzimtzum. You with me? Yes? You with me? Menachem Mendel. So seviv kalalmin is not a new air. It's the same air that was before the tzimtzum, except lagabe yos it's behelam. Memala kalalmin is such a new air that you call it yesh mayayin, it's chachas. But it's not as chachas. Why? Air comes from the Eibishter. This chachas isn't the tzir of the air. Because the air is changed by the tzimtzum. So changed that you call it havoya. So changed that you call it chiddush. What is the change? Now go back to the beginning of the Pedic. Okay? The inyan at tzimtzum arishin. Who? The idea of tzimtzum is sha'oy sha'yat chila. There was a light that was revealed in the Machon or the says Kala Matthias before. This alim lagamri was completely hidden, and I explained to you before that the way the oil is hidden is by the Eibishter juicing the oil up. Remember? Oil has a gufa and a neshama, has a mus and a Matthias. What's the Matthias of it? What's the gufa of it? Anybody? What's the gufa, the chitayim of it? Gilui. The gufa of it is gilui. What's the mahus of it? What's the neshama of it? Bittel. Bittel. So when oil is begilui, it means that the mahus was weakened. Because if the oil is very concentrated, the oil is going to be dark. Oil mein amor means the source is helam be'etzem, they should be also helam be'etzem. If the
so you're saying I didn't say when you say I didn't say you're not referring to the Eibishter?
Chas v'sholem.
And when so ask us.
Oh, young man, you're welcome to this class, but you're not welcome to go where you want to go. You're in the middle of the whole business, whole situation. It doesn't work that way. This is a Q&A. I'm sorry, I'm attacking you, but please don't do this to me. Don't rattle my brain. Stick around for a while. Stick around for a while. You already rattled my brain. I'm a Achei.
Speaking about
That the very fact that oil is a gila shows on the tzimtzum. See, you know how the Eibush made tzimtzum addition? He put more bittel into the oil. In other words, tzimtzum addition happened not by taking the oil away, by making the oil higher than it was. Lifnei tzimtzum, the oil was in a matzav of gilui. Gilui is a stira to metzias. So the way you make a tzimtzum in oil is not by making the oil less, but by making the oil more. When you bring back into the oil the bittel, the mahus, right? If you know the ma'ameh ketzam l'cheshach, the moir sheba'ir, which the oil had before it was gilui, so the gabi the makar b'chol, it's dark. But what actually happened to the oil was it became higher. That's the pshat that tzimtzum is stronger than it instead listening at tzimtzum. And tzimtzum is a product of the fact that the aid is begilui. And when the aid is begilui, the aid is diminished. V'haraya, there could be a gilui. What's tzimtzum addition? The aid becomes bottle again. Hashem infuses back into the aid what we would call the mahus of aid versus the metzias of aid. So the gabed, the makah, machol, it's choshuch. Right? So what happens next? Please somebody tell me the correct answer. What happens next? What happens next? Every is a vatal the eid. So the gabi the makam achol the eid is not begila. Yeah, what's left over? Caleb. That's the first big event.
Why doesn't
the first big. I'm sorry.
Why doesn't the Caleb also become bottle if he's adding bittul into the oil?
Because he only does it to the oil half of the eid safe, not to the Caleb. The first and most important reason of a tzimtzum addition is to create kalim. And again, creating kalim is not creating kalim. Kalim like oil come from atzmos. Creating kalim means making a chiddush in the kalim. When the aid is removed, the kalim are able to become stronger. Because lifnei atzimtzum, the whole metzias of kalim was only a magala aid. Now they become a metzias by themselves to be makala, to be ma'ila master and so on. And the second thing is that even when the aid is going to come back, the kalim is going to be first. Tator gover is kalim. When you learn the other day, you'll understand what I'm saying. Before tzimtzum addition, tator gover is aid. Aid is stronger than kalim. By the moment of tzimtzum, by the point of tzimtzum, the Eibishter removes aid, the keli is left over, so the kelim become a metzias. Okay, now what happens next? Chazav v'heir. The aid is to come back, correct? Now, if the point of tzimtzum addition is vatal the aid, so the aid is bottled, why does it want to come back? It's better off being bottled. So there's a long story. Gorkov is not here, but I explained it to him. I showed him the Maimon inside. Peirik Reish Ayin Gimel, which I think is in the third Krach of Ayin Beis. In the new print, it's in your sefer. Reish Ayin Gimel, the Rebbe Rashab explains the process why the kaf comes back. The Eibush is mavatal ain't safe, so it disappears. So the Mokah Machol, there's no air. So the Caleb becomes stronger. And then the Eibush brings the air back. The air Hasev of Kalaman comes back exactly as it was before, except that now it's Behelim. As the Rebbe said, Lashon, the only tzimtzum Lagabi Elam is not Lagabi itself. But the Eir HaKav comes back to break through the tzimtzum itself, to break through Chayshach tzimtzum. So you have a fight. You have a Hakor. You have a, what is the Lashon inside? You look in the Ha'ara, you have the page now. Yeah, now you can look inside. Look at the end of Ha'ara 21. Liyesei davar negdi el ha'er. The line before, Ayadei Tzimtzum Gufa Liyoisai Dovar Negdi Eloher. Tzimtzum Harishan says no, and the Ein Sof says yes. So there's a conflict, there's a struggle between the union of Gilui, which has now been returned to the Makam Machol after the Kalim became stronger, and the Tzimtzum itself, and the Eir wins. The Eir jostles the straight through Cheshach Tzimtzum, and it comes into the Makam Machol. But because the Tzimtzum said no and the Eir said yes, the air comes in a shini amahus. Such a shini amahus that we call it mazel, that we call it hara. The hara, we call this havas. There's a new way. Let's read it inside. Read it inside. Yeah, you with me? Cooked innovating. Says the Rebbe, we're on page Reish Lamed Aleph, page Gimel, third line. Sha'oi sha'hoya tchila. The air ain't safe, which was in the Makam HaMetzias before, in the Kol HaMetzias before. Nis alim lagami is completely hidden by becoming bottle in its source. V'nisha chol l'makam, what's left over is a space, makam. And I told you that I just saw ba'ashkocha pratis, Tafshan Lamed Gimel, the Maimer, one of the Maimer, which Hemshech to Yitzvat, that I taught years ago, but I looked at it now because I'm teaching them Tafshan Lamed Gimel, where the Rebbe says it's wrong to say Eidin Seif Malik Kol Makam Achol. You have to say Eidin Seif Malakala Matthias. Because although Makala Matthias means Makam, but you can't call it Makam until it forms. And Koydem Atimtum has not yet had an opportunity to form because it's Batal Agabe De'er. So the Rebbe says they wrote in the Hanocha, Malakala Matthias, Malakala Makim. So the next Maimed, the Rebbe said in the Hanocha that they wrote last week, they wrote, in the Maimed, the Rebbe says that they wrote in the Hanocha Malakam Achol, they shouldn't have written Makam Achol, they should have written Malakala Matthias.
Why does that make it better?
Because you're describing it not by what it is, by its tzir, but the etzamiyah for mitzias. Now, if I was a gambling man, I would gamble that the Rebbe said Mamalik Makam Achol. That's why they wrote it. They wrote where the Rebbe said it, but the Rebbe said nit richtig. That's like Mamalik Mitzias. Okay, but the Tzimtzum Rishon removes it. V'nishar cholol u'makam pod. There's an empty space. Now you're looking inside. Then the kav has to come back. But there's a very big difference between how the kav comes back and the Eidin Seif HaSevel Klam comes back. The Eidin Seif HaSevel Klam comes back exactly as it was before. It's only that it's behel. But the kav has to fight through the Cheshach HaTzimtzum. Hila'achet his almus. Hefsek. The Eidin Seif has to come back after being interrupted and hidden. When the Eid is going to return to the Makam Acholog, it's b'derech dilug. It's by way of a jump, or Lila translated in English, quantum separated. There's a quantum separation. There's a big separation between how the Eidin Seif was before the Tzimtzum and the Eidin Seif is after the Tzimtzum. Because before the Tzimtzum it was eagle, it was like Seviv Kalamit. And now it's going to becoming, it's called Havoy. You created a new Eid, even though you're not really creating it, you're just changing a change in the Eid. You're affecting a change in the Eid, which is called the Hischachos. Are you looking inside? Huh? V'agamen, even though, okay, skip the brackets. Okay, let's read it. V'agamen, even though Shagam Be'esat Simsim Nisha Deshimu Kimavur B'kama Makemis. The siluk is lav dafka. When the Eirish took away the Eidin Seif, it was not mamish an empty space. The Shima was left over, and the literal translation of what the Shima means, a trace of Eid. Which means that the Maimorim give a mashal if you write something in a paper and you erase it, so you could see that something was written. That's called the Reisha. The Reisha means it's a trace of the Eidin Seif which was before, which is left over. Okay, Mavur Gamba Maimer Anal the Cholo Lav Daf. This is the famous Maimer L'Hovash Chosam Beitzes Chaim, which itself is a container of a Yikra. El Shishir Shimu. So the Rebbe says, nah, but the Shimu is not a little bit of Eid. No. Harei Inye Reshimu Wakech Nela. In other words, the Makar HaKelim. Okay, Yedua the Reshimu Kech HaVosha Bein Seif Sheresh HaKelim. When you're talking about the aspect of Eidin Seif, which has to do with revelation, light and revelation, Ha'Timtzum is Siluk Ve'esalmus Lagamri, the light is taken away completely. Ubemela, you listening? V'amshach ha'er shalayachare ha'Timtzum. When the Eidin Seif is going to come through the Tzimtzum, after the Tzimtzum, it's been completely changed. How has it been changed? That before the Tzimtzum it was in a state of eagle, it couldn't go into Kalim, and as a result of the Tzimtzum it could go into Kalim. Which is why the Dveikus of Eid after the Tzimtzum is Dveikus Chayadei Hefsek. It's still Dveikus. Right? What is the translation of the word Dveikus? Representative of, which is more than bittul. My mitzias is nothing other than reveal the Eibishter, but it's dveikus ayadei hefsek. It's represented Eibishter hefsek ve'eina v'chenas dveikus mamish as opposed to dveikus mamish. Now I don't know exactly what the difference is, but those are the Eisiyas Harav. There's dveikus mamish and there's dveikus ayadei hefsek. Ubemele eine beginnes eir v'gili kol kach. It's not such a qualitative eir v'gili. And he brings the Machon from Chassidus. Okay? So now, boyas. I'm going to ask you a dumb question. This is the Rebbe's Maimer. Which sheet is it going according to?
Classic.
Huh?
The classic shit.
The old Shita. In the Ha'aris he brings Ayin Beis. I would say that it's written in the kind of way that it could speak to either sheet. It was written in such a oifen that you could explain it according to both sheetas. that the Shita of Eretz Pshutim would agree with what's written here, and even the Shita of Eretz Mitzayarim would agree what's written here. Okay, what's the problem? What's the problem? Anybody, what's the problem? What's the problem?
It says that it's almost the Gamri in the Yiddish.
And Machon continues of Eretz Mitzayarim. We are saying that there's a mashmos, correct? We are saying that there's a mashmos in Eitz Chaim, that if you will hold that there's Esses Sfiris and Oir, you're listening? If you will hold that Esses Sfiris and Oir, the Tzimtzum Rishon is only miyut. Machon? The Tzimtzum Rishon is only miyut. And the way the Maimer reads, Tzimtzum Rishon is Siluk L'Gamri. Right? How could I say? I'm asking kasha on myself, you see. The Rebbe says for the kasha. How could I say 5 minutes ago that this mind from the Rebbe is written in Oifen is a matam only by the shittas according to the sheet of the Hemshech Chaim Beis? There's a mashmos that the Tzimtzum Rishon has to be siluk only lagabi era sevev kol almin, but it doesn't have to be siluk lagabi akavi only miyut. Okay, so look inside.
According to the Machon, no?
Footnote 20, please. Footnote 20, please. Footnote 20, please. Behemshech terav chelik aleph perik yud ches, which is what we're learning. It says, you listening? Shela hashita sheshera shakav meir hagvul. According to the shita that holds that the shera shakav is from oir hagvul. Now, I want you to understand something. It doesn't say eir hagvul, but it doesn't say koyach hagvul. Machon? It says oir hagvul. And you remember from last time, from Nosei, that one of the points that the Rebbe brought out is that lefi drush there, there's 3 things, not 2 things. There's the Eid Seifa Bligvul, there's the Mokar HaKelim, which is Koyach HaGvul, and then there's the Eid HaKav, which is Nishtahein and Nishtahez. He calls it Oir HaGvul. Oir HaGvul is a Gvul. It's only Eid HaGvul Lagabi Eid Seif, but it's not Eid HaGvul because it's Oir. Look, Loi Hutzrach, Li Yeis Tzimtzum B'derech Siluk. The Tzimtzum Rishon does not have to be B'derech Siluk. For your maspik, you do it insufficient. Sherak Yis Alam Eira B'ligavol, that you remove the Eid Seif, which is a Mokar of Seif of Kalam. Okay? Yeah, so we have a kasha. How come in the P'tim it says that the Eid Seif is Tzalak B'gamri? So first of all, he says like this. Number 1. Numero uno. Masha Tzimtzum Hoye B'derech Siluk. Even in our Maimer, we also hold that the Tzimtzum has to be B'derech Siluk. Shenes Alam Gam Eid HaGavul Kama Sheiresh HaKav, that the Eid Seif, which is the Mokar HaKav, also had to be removed. But the B'shvil HaKelim, for the Kelim. Chevre, it must gedenken. You guys must remember that this mashmos of Periket Ches, which is going to go on for 2 Maimorim, I think, is not even true. The mashmos is that Tzimtzum Rishon, according to the sheet of Esesferis and Eid, Lagabi Eid HaSeif of Kalam and Tziluk Lagamri, Lagabi Eid HaMalakah, it's biyut, right? But that's not true. Because you need to have Tziluk Lagamri to create Caleb. Eid HaKav would also be a Tziluk to Caleb. So the mashmos is, if not for Caleb, the Eid Ein Seif HaKav would have been left over. So that answers my question right off the bat. Right? I asked you a question. Is the Rebbe's Maimer going according to the sheet of our Hemshech as a Sfiras Eid Seif? Or is the Rebbe's Maimer going on the sheet which is before the Hemshech Chaim Beis, that there's no such thing as a Sfiras Eid? So we decided, right? We decided, yeah, Ani v'yafsi anoid, al ra'ani, or nafsi on dry sheet, dry days. We decided that going to bullshit. So then I asked you, how could according to both Shitas? Because according to the sheet of Esfiras and Eir, we learned in Perigel Ches it's only miyut. Okay? But Rabbi say on the very top of page Lamed Ches it says, no.
Bottom of the first paragraph.
The first paragraph, page Lamed Ches. You have 3 lines from the end of the parish. V'tiris shom chozel rak v'shulas havas hakelim dim hoya nishara eir afil rak eir akav loy efshalis havas hakelim. In other words, there's no argument about the metzias. There's an argument about this mashmos. Lepoil, whether you hold as a spheres and eir or you don't hold as a spheres and eir, simtzam barishin has to be silik l'gam l'gam, all of it ain't safe. Why? According to both shittas, it's only to create kalim. The nafkamina is whether you have to have silik l'gam to create kav. According to the shittas of Eidus Pshutim, the symptom creates the kav. So the symptom addition has to be silik l'gamri, not just to create kalim, but otherwise you have to create kav. And the kav has to be created by derech eschachus. Because the intention of the symptom according to the shit of Eidus Pshutim is igulim. Right? So for one reason, both should disagree. But for the other reason, there's a plukt. So we're learning a maimed that's not describing how things are, but it's describing how things could be if not for something else. And the Rebbe is going to dedicate 2 Maimorim to explain this mashmos. That Eir HaKav, if not for the problem of Kalim, would be miyut. L'poil, there is a problem of Kalim. So it has to be siluk, it has to be chosev eir. But according to the Shita of Esesfiras and you don't have to have a kol. See, according to the Shita of Eidus Pshutim, the kav is created by the tzimtzum, right? There's a fight. According to the Shita of Eidus Mitzuyarim, you have to remove the air completely in order for the kelim to form, right? But when you want to bring the Eir HaKav back, it doesn't have to be a fight. Because the Eir HaKav is a prima b'yatzim. Remember that? So the chayr does not come in here also. Kula alma lay pliga, the tzimtzum ish has to be silika el lagam for the sake of kelim, but not for the sake of kav. In the sheet of Eidas Pshutim, the tzimtzum ish and silika is that the kav should be created through this. What's the lashon in the maimed? Davar negel oil to make a sheen in the host of the Eid, which calls his chachos, his havos. But if you go in our shita, that is Esesfiras Nedin safe, and most importantly, Feldman, that the in of that Eid is gilui from matzvos, pnimi biyatzem. You don't have to have a fight between the Nedin safe and the Kecha Tzimtzum for the earth to become a shinam hus. The Eid lifnei Tzimtzum is already for the sake of gil. So in other words, in Lepoil, Tzimtzum Rishon is silik l'gamri. But they only agree about the prat of kelim. When it comes to the prat of kav, in one sheet it's negeya to create this new air, and the other sheet you don't need it because the kav just the same air which is neya tzimtzum comes back la'achar tzimtzum without a shina because the that air is gilu. You follow? Menachem lahal smit. You with me? Now let's learn our language. Perikut Ches. And I'm reading just the very beginning of the second paragraph, Page Lamed Ches, and then the very, very end. We still have a kasha. Why? We agree that because of Caleb, the tzimtzum rishon has to be still l'kagame, even l'gabe the kav. But as far as the Eid is concerned, if you go in the shita of Ayin Beis, you don't have to have siluk, you could leave it over. Says the Rebbe, I have a kasha on that, on this mashmos. Why? Right, this that it says in Eitz Chaim, that it's possible that mitzad the Eid ain't safe, the Eid HaKav could be left over, and the only reason it has to be removed is for Caleb. But mitzad the Eid, it doesn't have to be taken away, right? Says the Rebbe Rashab, it's not true. The Kav also changes. Why? The Harei, translate Harei in English, emphasis, Gam hamshachas HaKav or the tzimtzum shoyetchil. Even in our sheet, that holds as Esesfiras and Eir, and even mitzad Kav, which you don't have to have the davar negdi to make the mitzias of Kav, because the Kav is an Eir pnimi b'yetzim. Still, it has to be for the tzimtzum. That v'gam lefi mashmos ha'etz chayim, even according to the mashmos of the etz chayim, which is what our whole Perek is going on. On mashmos, it's mashma for etz chayim, that if not for Kalim, you would need to have sil gabi akav. Shaho yabe'ef shesh yishar b'chinas akav, that it's possible that the kav shall be left over, so the Rebbe Rashab that I have a kasha on that. I have a kasha on that mashmos. Imagine there's no problems with Kalim. Imagine there's no problem with Kalim. If there's no problem with Kalim, the Tzimtzum Arishin, according to the sheet of Drush there with the Sfiris and Oyer, is only to remove the Eira Sev of Kavamin. The Eira Kav could remain in the Makam Machol. Right? No Shire, says the Rebbe Rashab, that's not true. Mekomokim nevertheless. Even in our sheet, even in the sheet that there's a Sfiris and Oyer, and faket, more importantly, that the inyan of Kav is Pnimi Be'etzem, from Atzmos, its inyan is to go into Kalim. So you don't have to have the Tzimtzum Addition to change the Mahus of the Eid. There should become B'shini HaMahus, Shecham B'derech Havos, it should be able to be a Pnimi going to Kalim, because the Eid was a Pnimi Be'etzem. Says the Rebbe, Akol Ponim Tzimtzum Gam Be'erakav. Even according to our sheet, even if the issue of Kalim was not a problem, there is a change in the Kav. The Kav was different. Lifnei HaTzimtzum, there is Lachar HaTzimtzum. So the question is, Eichu, how could we say that the Eid HaKav is beginning as Gili HaHel Magabi Shoshi HaMakedi? If the Eid HaKav is Gili HaHel Magabi Der and Seif Shalifnei HaTzimtzum. And it's only Yesh Meyayin, like the Rebbe said in the previous Pedic, Lagabi Eid HaSeif Kalam, and the Kav has still changed. Now, you tell me, how has the Kav changed? If we're going to accept that there's no issue of Kalim, Kalim requires Siluk, yeah? If there's no issue of Kalim, just the need of Eid. So the Eid should take to the Eid and save and leaves over the Eid of Amalek, leaves the Eid HaKav, right? The Rebbe Rashab's question is, but the Eid HaKav also changes. If the Eid HaKav also changes, why is it Gili HaHelam? Now, what will be the change in Eid HaKav? Huh? Okay, we took from the Hara. He took from the Hara. The Rebbe Rashab says there would be a change in Eid HaKav, but doesn't say what the change would be. He doesn't tell you the nature of the change. He simply says that even if there was no need to remove the Eid HaKav, the Kav is changed by the Tzimtzum Arish. Now, Menachem Mendel looked in footnote 20, the part that I didn't read yet, and he read that the Rebbe Rashab speaks about his Chalkus. Maybe that's the pshat, but let's agree that the Rebbe Rashab doesn't say it. The Rebbe Rashab is talking to himself. No, how do you say it in all Tedish, What are you talking about? What are you hacking? What are you talking about? The Kav is left over before for the fortunes. If after that, no shinin, what are you talking about? Of course there's a shinin in Kav. What that shinin he doesn't tell you, he just tells you there's a shinin. And therefore he has a kasha. If there's a shinin from Kav before Tzimtzum, to after Tzimtzum, the Kav is also Yesh Miyayin, the Kav, the Mokar of the Kav, not just the Kav, the Save of Kalam. Now, what's his teretz? What is teretz to this kasha? I should really hold you with a poker that's hot and say, show me the teretz. He's asking a kasha on himself. We're using a mashmos of the Eitz Chaim to say that mitzad Eid HaKav, there's no shinif before the tzimtzum to the after the tzimtzum. Ubemela it's Gili HaHel Magabi the Makar HaKav. It's only Yesh Men Magabi and Sefer Sefer Klamen. And the Rebbe Rashab is asking a kasha on himself. What are you hacking? Yeah, was hackst that chaynik? The Kav is also changed. He doesn't say what the change is. He simply says that the Kav has changed. We could say it's Chalkus. We could say, I don't care what. Okay, but there's a shinui. I would say there's a higher, but it's more gili. But it doesn't matter what, right? But what's his teretz? How does the Rebbe Rashab is asking a kasha? What's his teretz? I'll ask you a dumber question. Where is the teretz? You're all holding books. Don't look at me. Look inside. Where's the teretz? Anybody? Huh? Where's Achei? Where's Achei?
Third line of this paragraph.
No. Oh, gerecht. Yes, you're right. The third line in that paragraph, Achei, the teretz is, the lefi shita zu, according to this shita. You're right, correct. I stand corrected. The SS Sfiris Agnuzis Usharashi Ha'eris. That the SS Sfiris Agnuzis is an Eir by itself. So the Rebbe, look at the words. Look at the words of the Rebbe. Tzarech Lema, you have to say, look at the Oishis Harav. The be'emes einei doima, that there's taka tzimtzum and ein safe. There's taka tzimtzum and ein kav, but you can't compare the two. Einei doima tzimtzum that ein safe. You cannot compare the tzimtzum that happens to the ein safe la tzimtzum shebesheidah shemakar kav. The tzimtzum of ein safe is a real change. The tzimtzum makar sheish kav is taka a change. We're not sure what the change is, but there's some kind of a change. There's some kind of a change. But it's not such a big change that makes the kav ischachus. We're going in a mashmos. That if you go in the sheet of Esesfiris and Eid, the kav could be left over. It doesn't have to be taken away. Correct? Yeah. So the Rebbe says, if the kav left over, it's gilia helim, lagabi, it's mokir lifnei atzimtzum. So the Rebbe's kasha is what? What are you talking about? The kav has changed. He said, yeah, it is changed. But it's not changed, but that is chachus. It's changed a little. But that little change doesn't make it yesh meyayin. That little change doesn't make it a new Matthias. It's just a little bit less. So that's the teretz. The kasha wasn't even there. The kav goes through a sheinu, even according to Drush there. And even if not because of the problem of Kalim, if the kav is changed from before the tzimtzum to after the tzimtzum, that makes the kav his chachus agabe and says no. Yeah, there is a change in the air from before the tzimtzum to after the tzimtzum. Lagabi Eid HaSeva Klam, it's a real change. Lagabi Dera Malkam, it's a change. But it's not the kind of change which is going to make the kav to be called a chiddush or yesh meyayin is havas. Lagabi Dera Tzemtzum Lefnei HaTzimtzum. And look at the last line of the page. Look at the last line of page Lamed Ches. Lefi HaMavur Kan, L'shita now on our sheet, that Sheidish HaKav of Mesfiras HaKnuzis, Ein inyan atzimtzum doim ezelazeh. This taka atzimtzum lagabe eir seif ha-sevel kalamin. This taka atzimtzum lagabe eir ha-mamala kalamin. But lagabe sevel kalamin, it's ischachus. Lagabe mamala kalamin, it's just a shinoi, but it's not ischachus. The atzimtzum shoyeh ben seif ha-sil look v'salmus lagabe. Lagabe eir ha-sevel kalamin, there goes away completely. Machon came by tzimtzum, the sheresh ha-makar ha-kav. The tzimtzum from the sheresh ha-makar ha-kav. And the kav, look at the last words of the kitzur. Look at the kitzur. You see page Lametes, first paragraph. You see the kitzur? Yeah, read the two lines. V'agam sha'akavu gam kadei tzimtzum. That's the kasha. You see the words? L'chayre the kav is also through a tzimtzum, so the chayre is chashus. Hine the shita zu, according to our sheet of the Ayin Beis, the sheresh hakav v'asiris haknuzis hatzimtzum shel kav is rak b'chinas miyut, and because it's b'chinas miyut, it's not as chashus. It's the same oil, it's just less. The kasha was that the kav is yesh miyai and the gabi it's shadish. No, it's just gilia hela. It's miyut. We're not sure what the miyut is, but it's only miyut. So the Rebbe Rashab is having a conversation with us that's extremely edel. I know what makes it edel? Because he doesn't tell you what the tzimtzum is. He just tells that there is a tzimtzum. He says, but the tzimtzum is so small that it's only miyut. And Abai said the Rebbe is going to explain this in Perek Yates, and in Perek Chof, and in Chofav, Chabesh, the next 5 and a half. The Rebbe is going to explain the miyut, the difference between Eid HaKav as it was before the tzimtzum, and the Eid HaKav after the tzimtzum. And the point of that explaining is that even though the kav after the tzimtzum is different than its shadish or mokal, it's not tzimtzum, it's not ischachus. It's not yesh meyayin, it's just gilia hela. Did you understand what I just said? Did you understand what I just said? You understand what I just said? Yeah? You understand? So it's like, you have Erin Seif, which is the Mokar Kav before the Tzimtzum. You have the Kav after the Tzimtzum. There's a difference between how they before the Tzimtzum and after the Tzimtzum. But that difference is not Yesh Meyayin, it's just a small difference. A difference which is called a Miyut. And the Rebbe Rashab is going to explain us the Miyut. But remember, this whole thing isn't even true. Why not? Because of Caleb, the Silik Lagamri. It's a mashmas. So we're going to spend 6 or 7 prakim explaining something which is an actual, because of Higoyin. Theoretisch, in theory, if there wasn't a problem with Caleb, the Eid HaKav could be left over. There's a difference between how the Eid HaKav is before the Tzimtzum and after the Tzimtzum. That difference is only me. It's not a Shinam. I just want to remind you, I don't know if this is true, but I want to remind you, according to the sheet of Eidos Pshutim, the kav is created by the fight with tzimtzum rishon, correct? Yeah. According to Ashita, you don't need such a big fight. Why? He's already gilui, so there's more than one aspect to it. But in the Rebbe's footnotes, in this Maimed, the Rebbe has lachazach. Avol neisef lazeh. Oh man, I can't talk to you now. Call me soon. I hung up on him and I told him to call me back. He didn't hear, but it's not my fault. Yeah. Footnote 20, Rabbi Yossi, third line. Avol neisef lazeh, in addition to the fact, shegam lefizeh sha'asiluk ha'bishul ha'kelim, that the siluk is for the sake of kelim, hamshachas ha'kav bepeil is a tzimtzum siluk gami. We agree, both shittas agree that the tzimtzum is siluk gami because of kelim. But hini gam b'shvil ha'kav atzmei. The kav also needs to be taken away and brought back, even according to our shita. B'chtei shiyeh b'chinas eschalkos, there should be eschalkos. Now, I think this word eschalkos is what we're going to be learning in Tes and Chof and Chafal and Chabez here. So it's not like yesh meyayin. You're not saying that the kav after the tzimtzum is chachos or gab lifnei tzimtzum, but it is shinu, and the Rebbe is going to explain the shinu to us. Lepayel, we hold that the tzimtzum edition is still gami for the sake of kelim. So b'meila, when the kav comes back, even according to our shita, it's chazav v'heyed. But when it's chazav v'heyed, it's a shina mehutz l'gab lifnei. It's shina gab lifnei tzimtzum, but it's not shina mehutz. It's not chachos. It's just giliyahela. But if you did not have to have siluk gami, the mashmas, if you didn't have to have siluk gami, you would be able to leave over the erakav, there would still be a difference. And what that difference is, the Rebbe calls it miyut in the kitzeh, and the Rebbe is going to explain the next 6 prakim what that miyut means, if I understand the hemshech correctly. Questions or comments?
Dover Nagdiel is the other shita.
Huh?
Dover Nagdiel is the other shita.
L'chayre. But legabi his chalkus, darf man klären. Do you need Dovi and Nagdiel Eid for the sake of his chalkus according to our sheet?
This is called my base.
This is quote my base, but not here, later.
And later switching back to his shita.
No. Okay, we'll see. We'll talk about it. We'll see.